Where? Sammy. You gotta move the camera. You gotta bring the camera. You gotta bring the camera. Hey, say hi, Sammy. Oh, look at this guy. You know what? I'm allergic to cats. And I have 3 of them. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge Podcast. It's Sunday, and you know what that means? Bible stories with swearing. We are on part 2 of Joseph and his coat that is fly AF. And it goes into, I think we ended off last time with him getting in front of Pharaoh finally, right? This guy is a dream decipherer. So he has this gift that he can take someone's dream and tell them what it means. And it's like, in Bible times, that was a big deal because dreams are like prophecies almost sometimes. God speaks to you in your dreams. And if you do that now, though, you'll probably end up in a mental hospital. But in the time of the Bible, this stuff was really important. We're going to get right into it because it's quite a long second half of the story, and I don't want to like go on forever. It's cool how this all ends up. There's a couple of heartbreaking scenes, some heartwarming scenes here, and things that are happening in the story. And I want to maybe dissect what the heck this story is supposed to be all about. But in the end, I started realizing to myself that this is like the beginning of a massive journey for the Jews back to the land of Canaan, I think, or back to the promised land out of Egypt. Even though here in the end, you'll see that Egypt was good, which was basically like some of the beginning Jews and for their journey. So it's convoluted, but it comes together kind of nicely, I think. So let's get right to it. So we left off with the cupbearer telling Pharaoh about Joseph, and then he thinks he can decipher his dream, right? Cupbearer's like, oh yeah, remember this guy, the baker, he cut his head off. We also talked about the ramifications of putting raisins in things that don't belong. We talked about how jealousy is a powerful force that can cause a lot of shit, right? So jealousy of his brothers, because he got the sweet coat, and they, he had the dreams where he's like, you guys are going to be, bowing to me, and they're all pissed, and they're all jealous about it. So we learned a couple of lessons there, okay? No raisins and stop being jealous, okay? Let's not do the drama. So Pharaoh sends for Joseph. Joseph has him brought up from prison. He has a haircut. He gets a bath. he looks presentable. And Pharaoh's like, hey, I hear you're good at this. Like, you can decipher dreams. Well, now's your chance, right? And this is when, like, the Eminem music comes on. You get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow mom's spaghetti. You know that song? That song comes on in the back of Joseph's head. And he's like, I'm going to do this. He gets pumped. He's like, yeah. Right? He gets pumped up. That song pumps me up. When I'm running or working out, that song comes on like double time, okay? So Joseph says, look, it's beyond my power, but God can do it, which is like Bible times, right? So he's already humbled, and so people are like, okay, cool, let's hear this, because he's claiming that God will decipher the dream, so let's hear this, right? And God is working through Joseph. We know that from the beginning. So, but if you say that shit now, you're gonna get canceled, and people are like, you're an idiot or a loser, you worship a flying spaghetti monster, blah, blah, blah. And so, but this is like, oh, really? So let's do this, okay? So Pharaoh tells him the dreams about the zombie cows and the zombie grain. And Joe says, well, these dreams mean the same thing. So God's giving you advanced knowledge. The 7 cows and the grain means 7 good years. So the fat cows and the fat pieces of grain, that's 7 good years, okay? That's going to coming. But the zombie cows and the zombie grain means that the following the 7 good years, you're going to have 7 like horrible, famine, craziness years, and you got to prepare yourself. So here's what happens. He says, look, Pharaoh, you got to hire a really smart dude to come in, and you got to like plan this thing. You got to take 1/5 of everything, crops and produce and everything that comes in during the 7 good years, so that you can dish it out for the 7 bad years and nobody dies or, less death. And you got to have them gather all the food and bring them into the storehouses here in Egypt. And like, by the way, I'm sure some prosperity preachers have used this story to fill their already bloated pockets, okay? And if you've ever heard a pastor use this story to speak on tithing, kick them in the ball sack, okay? Metaphorically, okay? Because that's just not what this is about. This is not about tithing. This is about during harsh years to be careful with your money and all that stuff. If there's any lesson here at all, I don't know if there is. But he basically says, look, if you do this, you'll be aight. So Pharaoh's like, okay, cool. So here it is again. Like, it just works. If God's on your side, shit's happening. Okay? It's just going to work. So Pharaoh's like, obviously God is using you because this is clearly what's going on. So now you're in charge. And Joseph's like, oh, yeah, sure. If you want me to, like, are you sure me? I'm like, I work for a jail. Like, I'm in prison right now. And Pharaoh's like, yep. So he goes from being in prison to literally the second command of all of Egypt in a matter of 10 minutes. And so this is what Pharaoh says, right? I love what he says. Pharaoh says to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain around his neck, like with like the diamonds, the dollar sign with all the diamonds, you know, the badass hip-hop chains. He then has Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command, and wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, kneel down. So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval. Imagine going from prison to like being the most powerful person in Egypt next to Pharaoh. Obviously, they don't talk about it much, but man, I would be like, hell yeah! I would be like, let's do, this is a party. Like, thank God. So Joseph's whole world paid off. Things in his honor and everything he did paid off. He didn't succumb to Potiphar's wife. He in prison, he did his job and he helped people and he did whatever he could. He's lived a really good life and it's paid off to this point. That's not a lesson to of like doing good things will do good things, because maybe it will, maybe it won't. But in this guy's case, it did. So damn, payback's a bitch, yo. And if you don't think that was going through Joseph's head, you're right, it wasn't. Because I think Joseph's heart, obviously, he maybe up to this point he realized, okay, none of this could have happened if my brothers didn't sell me in slavery. I don't know, but he wasn't. There's no payback plan in place. So Pharaoh just gives Joseph a wife. Here's a wife. So weird. And he's ruling. So as he's ruling, he stores up so much food and produce that they can't even keep track of it anymore. They said it's like, there's so much, it's like grains of sand. That's how much food Joseph, he does his job very well. Like he knows it's coming. They know famine's coming. They're prepping like, you know, zombie preppers. If you know a zombie prepper, be friends with them, okay? They're very good in the end times. If there's something going to come down the road, you need to get yourself an end times apocalypse team. You're going to have a nurse, a doctor, somebody who can farm, who can build. I've got my apocalypse team ready to go. So make sure you get your apocalypse team. That's important. TM. So 7 years go by and everyone's happy. And then the 7 years of famine hits and shit just hits the fan all over Egypt. Just like Joseph said it would, right? So camera cuts back to Jacob's house and he's just looking at his lazy ass sons and he's like, why are you just sitting here playing Uno when we're all about to starve? Okay, get on your donkeys, get over to Egypt. They have grain. I've been looking at Twitter. I look at that. There's a commercial on TV. They have food. We don't have any food. So get off your lazy asses. Go get some food, but leave your youngest brother here. Cause Benji, he's not going with you because every time someone goes with you, the youngest dies. So stop killing my kids. So take him, go with all your other brothers, head out and go get some food. It's funny because it's clear that Jacob absolutely loves his kids, like with all his heart, but it's all the youngest that gets his heart. And it's true to see that. And so he's protecting his youngest, but it's really such a profound moment of love that you see through Jacob throughout all the story. And more dads need to be like this, like profoundly loving your kids and like just loving your kids so much it breaks your heart when you see them go, right? So it's just, I thought that was kind of a cool little part about who Jacob is in this story, about like the dad who like cries at all the movies, loves his kids so much, will do anything for them. I strive to be that kind of dad for my kids. So they get there to Egypt and Joseph's the one handing out the food because he's the governor of it all, right? And they have to go see him. So they don't recognize him because anyone in power like sits up on the giant top of the stairs. You can't see him. He's too far away, right? But Joseph recognizes them and he sees them right away. He knows exactly who they are, right? Because he's been mulling about this his whole life. So he remembers his dreams. He remembers that they're about to bow to him, right? He comes up with this plan and he shouts at them. He's like, you guys are spies. You're here to check out because we're vulnerable right now and you're spies. And they bow to him and they're like, no. We're not spies, I promise. No, we're servants who need food. And they're scared shitless because this is a guy that can have their heads off in an instant, can have them hanging by their nuts in an olive tree in a second, right? This guy's the most powerful person they've ever seen under Pharaoh. So it's incredible the power he has, right? We're honest men. I'm like reading this like, no, you're not. You assholes, you sold your brother to slavery. And that would have pissed me off. Like, I'm sure he was upset about that, right? That they said they were good people. He said, there's actually 12 of us. We're all brothers and sons of Jacob living in Canaan. We have one more brother back there, and one of our brothers is no longer with us. So at least they acknowledge that he existed, right? So Joseph comes up with a plan to get his brothers, to get his other bro there, because they didn't bring the younger bro, and he wants to see his bro, right? He wants to see his true brother, because that brother they left behind was his actual full brother. His mother is the same, right? These guys are all his half brothers, just the same dad. He says, okay, one of you guys stays here And the rest of you go home with all the grain and things you need to feed your families in your community. And when you come back, bring the younger brother and I'll let this guy to jail. Okay? So they start talking about amongst themselves and Joseph can hear it. But the Bible talks about there's a translator. So he's probably speaking Egyptian or whatever because he's been in the land for so many years and they don't think he can understand them. But he can hear everything they're saying. And then they start talking, whispering like, we're being punished because of what we did to Joseph. And like they're all admitting it. And they thought Joseph couldn't understand, but he knew and he could hear everything. So they chose Simeon to stay, right? So basically, Simeon was probably the redhead. And Joseph had him tied up right in front of them. So put in jail, basically said, look, he's here. He's staying until you come back with the other brother. He had his guys put the money that they paid back on top of their sacks and close it up. And on their way back, they probably stopped at a Starbucks and they checked their sacks to make sure everything's good. And they see the money there. And they're super scared, okay? Not just like, oh, hey, they gave her money back. They're scared because they think there's a conspiracy afoot. Something's going on. We're being accused of something we didn't do. Like, they're scared shitless right now. So they get home and they tell their dad what happened. And Jacob is pissed. Like, every time these guys go out, one of his sons dies or ends up in jail, okay? So Reuben says, look, let me handle this. And if I can't get it done, you can kill my 2 kids. Which is like Bible times. He's basically saying, we have to go back to get Simeon or, he's going to die in jail. And Jacob's like, nope, I don't care. Jacob loves his kids and everything, but he's like, no, I'm not losing another one of my favorite kids, right? And so he writes off Simeon kind of here, which is why I think it's now confirmed that he's a redhead. Or he's like the one in the family who's kind of the outcast. Like he's into furries and like an anime and his room smells funny and he only emerges when he needs, food and he wears like eyeliner. He's like, it's one of the two. He's a redhead or he's a weirdo, creepy guy who's into furries. And, even if your kid's into furries and weird stuff, you still love them, but you're like, still like, yeah, So the famine continues and they're forced to go back to get food, right? They didn't have enough and they have to go back. But they know they can't go back unless they bring Benji with them, right? So Jacob has to send them. And Jacob's like a guy who's a super nice dad. He doesn't really get mad, but he pretends he gets mad and he moans and cries out and he's like, why are you guys such assholes? Why did you tell him you had another brother? You didn't have to say anything, you idiots. And he's so sad because he has to send him back. So they're off. So they have to send back, you have to go get food because everybody's going to die. Like there's no choice. So Jacob sends them with gifts like gum and honey, pistachios, probably sends them off with like Doritos, some Canadian snacks like ketchup chips and coffee crisps and all that stuff. He's sending them with snacks and he doubles their money. He says, give them back the money that was found in the sack so you can't be accused of stealing and just tell them what happened. They get to Joseph's house and they tell the manager at the house, he says, look, here's the money that we found in our sack on the way back last time. I don't know how it got there, but like, here it is. We didn't steal it, I promise. And the manager's like, chill out, man. It's probably just God giving you the money, right? So they wanted to put them at ease because they were scared that they were going to be blamed of stealing. And that was like this guy, Joseph, this guy who has a different name. He's not even named Joseph, by the way. He got a weird name that Pharaoh gave him. I didn't tell you that earlier, but he got a weird name. And so they don't know him as Joseph. So they get in there and he brings him in the house and they're going to eat together. So Jacob just rolls in with his flowing robes, right? And they bow to him and they offer the gifts. And he asks, instead, he's like, just brushes it off. I don't need your gifts. How's your dad? So right off the top, he's like, how's your dad? Tell me about your dad. And they're not picking this up yet, right? But what a weird question. But they let him know. He's healthy, he's doing well, blah, blah, blah. And then he sees Benji, his brother, his full brother, okay? And he asks, is this the brother? He knows it is. And it's his full blood too. So I can't imagine what he's feeling right now. Like he finally seeing his brother after so long. And he gets so overwhelmed with emotion that he has to leave. And he's like bawling his eyes out in his bedroom. Like he's just like, just like his heart is broken. He can't tell them who he is. I don't know what he's thinking at this moment, what he's trying to do to get he finally sees his brother that he loves. And he's heartbroken because of this, because these guys did this to him and he hasn't seen them. And he's still like, no matter what your brothers do to you or your family does to you, and this is evident in a lot of cases of abuse too, you still love your family. Again, if he hasn't seen them in years and years, he struggled, he went to prison, he did so much, he got sold to slavery, he lives very well now, but he doesn't have his family. He's got everything a man can have except a family. And so he's heartbroken. And that really sucks. I think in the end, if you ask a lot of rich people and they're dying on their deathbed and everything else, you have everything you've ever had in your life. Money could buy you everything. But in the end, if you could, most of them will say, I wish I would have spent more time with my family. I wish I would have done more with this instead of just pursue money and happiness, quote unquote. And I wish I would have just spent more time with my family. You'll see most people on their deathbeds who have the opportunity to say that stuff, or even at the end of their life, will say, look, I failed my family and I wish I would have spent more time with them. A lot of people who live in absolute utter wealth, who work their whole life to just get everything they can, some of them, most of them, their family takes kind of a back seat to the success of them, and that's kind of hard to hear, but it really does happen. Even in like mildly successful people that I know, like, just work so hard that they, like, I'm providing my family, but they don't provide what their family actually needs, which is a dad. So that's a side thing. Sorry, I digress. He comes back in, his eyeliner's probably running, and they all eat, and then it's funny because he's like, give everybody some food, but he gives Benji like 5 times the amount of food. Could you imagine? They're all eating their food, and all of a sudden Benji's plate's like piled high with like KFC. It's crazy. So when they were ready to leave, Joseph tells his manager to fill their sacks fit to burst and return the money, but put this silver cup in Benjamin's bag, okay? And the cup was basically the crown jewels, because I think it was a gift from Pharaoh, basically saying, hey, this guy can basically tell the future through dreams. And it's just like it's just like one of those gifts that everybody knows it exists, and if you steal it, you're gonna die. So halfway home, the police catch up to them because Joseph sends the police after them. He's like, sends his guys after them. Hey, go find my cup, right? This was kind of dirty. So halfway home, Joseph people find him, and they ask who stole the cup, and they say whoever it was is coming back with us, and they're gonna be slaves, right? So it's obviously in Benji's bag, and when they saw this, they all tore their clothes. Keep tearing their clothes. So funny. If I had a nickel for every time someone tore their clothes in the Bible, I could buy a Tesla. So it's so funny, and they all had to return to the city. So Joseph is waiting and asks them what they've done. This is where it gets a little bit dumb, though, because he lied and set them up, but they kind of deserved it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know what's going through Joseph's head. Does he just want his brother back so he can just tell his real brother who he is and then just like live and have his real brother come on board? I don't know what his plan was here. It was not very clear. So Joseph says, look, not all of you are in trouble, only the guy who has the cup. You're going to be my slave. So Judah steps forward and tells Joe, Judah's one of the brothers, and he steps forward and he tells Joe all about how Benji's the only full brother of Joseph, whom his father loved so much, and if he doesn't bring this guy home, if Benji doesn't come home, his dad will die of heartbreak. And he asks him to take him as a slave instead. So his brother's like, look, just let Benji go home. Our dad will die without him. Like, he's the only like remaining blood of Joseph, whom our dad loves so much, so just take me instead. So Joseph's heart is so broken now. This just got way out of hand. And so he sends everyone out of the room. All the servants are gone. And he stands there with his brothers and he just breaks down crying. And he tells them who he is. And he broke down so loudly that all of Egypt is hearing this. And he even gets back to Pharaoh eventually, okay? He's so heartbroken. He's just wailing out in sadness. And then he says, look, I'm the brother, you assholes. I'm Joseph. I'm the one you sold to slavery, okay? But then it shifts. Like he lays it all out, and they are like, here's what he says. But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. This is important. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace, and the governor of all of Egypt. This is why it's important. Joseph got sent here. I'm just realizing this now. It's so funny. Joseph got sent here because he is the beginning of the release of the Jews from Egypt. Because in the end of this story, you're going to find out how the Jews all became slaves to Egypt. Okay? But this is the beginning of God sent Joseph in there to mitigate the disaster of famine. So in the end, the Jews are going to come out. It's really convoluted and weird, but this is really interesting. So the music changes, okay, in the movie. And he says, go tell dad I'm alive. And basically the most powerful human on earth underneath Pharaoh. So then weeping with joy, he hugs his brother Benjamin, okay? And we talked about this at our fireside chats recently, like the hug of all hugs. Like the hugs that we're all missing right now because of COVID, okay? Like, one thing that's COVID is killing me on is that I can't hug people, and I miss hugs, and I'm the best hugger there ever was to be had, okay? I give you bear hugs that just sweep you up into this tight, beautiful hug that just lasts, unless, consent. I just love hugging people, and so he hugs his brother, and you imagine he's been without them for so many years, and he just hugs Benjamin like... He's probably bawling his eyes out, and everybody's crying in the room. Oh, I miss those hugs. But then he kisses each of his brothers, and they're all crying, they're all blubbing, and then they start talking freely, right? It's such a good cinematic, heartfelt moment here that he's just basically forgiven them for what they've done, because he's like, look, this is God who did this. He kind of used you to get me here. And so all is forgiven. Let's just be brothers again, right? And could you imagine the celebration and the heartfelt awesomeness that went on? What a great moment of forgiveness. If anything we're being taught here is that no matter what happens to you, who hurts you, who does dirt against you, forgiveness should be there. So Pharaoh finds out and he's moved, right? He says, bring your families back here and I will give you the best land, and your family will eat from my table. That's badass, okay? So Joe does this, and he sends them off with royal wagons, and they get all new clothes, and they're all pimped out, looking good. But he gives Benji 5 changes of clothes. It's so funny. Benji's getting all the good stuff. He definitely loved Benji the most out of all of them. So imagine being Jacob, okay? And cut back to the farm in Canaan. Off in the distance, there's all the smoke and dust, and he's like, what's going on here? And then all these wagons start approaching. And he's like, oh my gosh, what did these kids do now? These bunch of assholes, what did they do now? So anyway, they roll up dressed in their fancy new clothes, and they're all like, Dad, oh my God, Joseph's alive. He's alive. Like, could you imagine, like, they have this good news, everything's forgiven, and they can't wait to get back to tell their dad, who they know loved Joseph so much. They're like, he's alive. And also, he's the most powerful person on earth under Pharaoh. FYI. So Jacob is speechless, and he's like, okay, turn it around. We're going back. I have to see my son before I die, right? I can't even imagine the surreal moment that happened here when they're telling him about this, who he did, what happened, the whole story, and his dad's like, let's go. At this point, Jacob is really old, okay? And he's like, I have to go see my son. He's like his mission, so let's go. On their way back, Jacob is spoken to by God in a vision. This happened a lot in the Bible, right? Obviously. He says, I am God, the God of your father. The voice said, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make your family into a great nation. This is the Jews, okay? I will go with you down to Egypt, and I will bring you back again. You will die in Egypt, but Joseph will be there with you to close your eyes. This is crazy because we're foreshadowing the massive movement of Jews in Egypt and when they came out because of Moses. This is a very important connection in the Bible that we rarely talk about, or that I didn't even see before. This is maybe me not listening in Bible class at Bible college, but this is really cool. So he's like, look, this all comes back to Jacob. Jacob is the patriarch here. He's the one the Jews are coming out of his loins, right? Joseph was the guy that mitigated the disaster so that Jacob and his family could survive in order to create this lineage of Jews that are going to come out back to the promised land, which is Canaan. Very cool. This is like sad AF, okay? And happy because he gets to see his beloved son again, who he's missed so many years. And his stupid asshole sons robbed him of all this time he had with his favorite son. So all the Jacob household, including all the relatives, all the animals, are all now moving to Egypt. They're all just on this caravan out to Egypt. Then it goes on to say who they all are and the lineage, and no one cares, right? When you read this part of the Bible, we're like, this, I guess it's important, but because it's important to the lineage of Jews. But in the end, I'm not reading all that, and no one wants to read that shit. So they're on their way there. Joseph, kind of sees them in the distance. He's like, they're coming up. They're about a day away or whatever. So Joseph takes off and meets them. And they see each other, and they embrace for a long time, it says. They're blubbing, and they're crying, and Jacob's heart is restored. Apparently, they just probably hugged, like, post-COVID hug like you've never seen. Joseph alive, here he is, and Jacob says, I can die a happy old man. Like, so sad. Right? Since I've seen your face and I know you were still alive, I can die a happy old man. Oh, this poor old man. His sons are a bunch of a-holes. And so finally it ends up in a good part of the story, right? We're saying something here that's redemption has happened because of what God had in place. And sometimes pain and shit has to go down before the good comes out in the end. Not saying that pain is always an avenue to good, but if you stay the course and what God has for your life, if you know what it is, good things will come. But there always is pain before gain. I seem to find myself too. So they meet with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh honors his promise and lets them choose any land they want. Like, Pharaoh loved Joseph because, like, he's been in the kingdom for years and he's still, like, number one, and he's helping him, stave off death and everything else because of what he did. So Joseph brings his dad to meet Pharaoh, and Jacob, his dad, blesses Pharaoh. Jacob's a pretty powerful guy in Canaan. Don't forget, Canaan is basically Jacob. And Pharaoh asks, how old are you, old man? Because he's blessing the Pharaoh. And he says, look, I'm 130. So, as you get to be an older dude, you kind of get away with more. Yeah, I can't wait to be an old guy and just like swear at people randomly in the street and get away with it. You've earned it. Old people out there who do some crazy stuff, you earned it. You do you. I'm with you. So, and he blesses Pharaoh again. I don't know what he does to bless Pharaoh. I don't know if it's a hug or he just blesses him by saying you're blessed. I don't know. But Joseph gives him the best land in the region of Ramses. And if you know anything about Ramses, that's a huge deal. Ramses' land is Ramses is one of the most honored and celebrated Egyptian gods of all time and kings and whatever. Stuff goes on and the famine is even worse. And everyone is out of food and money. They've spent all their money already because people are coming in to get the food. They have to pay for it, right? They're not just getting it for free. And Joseph says, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. Now we're at the cow part, right? He says, bring me your livestock and I will give you money to pay for the grain. So they bring all their livestock. He collects it, gives them money. Then they pay for the grain. So the money and the livestock comes back to Pharaoh. Eventually, Pharaoh owns everything. This is important. Phase 2 of famine protection is also this huge movement to where Pharaoh becomes one of the most powerful rulers in all the land because now he owns everybody's land, their cows and cattle and their animals, and them. They literally become indentured slaves to Pharaoh. But it's not like it's a bad thing. They're like, look, he saved our life. We're okay to do this. And all the land, okay, that they had was now 1/5 always went to Pharaoh, even during good times, right? So Pharaoh was like rich beyond wealthy, rich and all that stuff. And so they were saved because of Joseph's planning, right? So Joseph's a very celebrated person. So Jacob's about to die. He's about 147 now. So he got to spend 17 years with Joseph. So all is not lost. He got some great time with his favorite son and everybody. The family was restored. It was a great moment, right? But he makes Joseph promise him not to bury him in Egypt. He wants to be buried with his ancestors in Canaan. And that's one big promise that we have to understand here about Jews leaving Egypt to get back to the promised land. It's so important, that promised land in the Bible. It keeps being mentioned. Half the stories in the Bible are about the promised land. And it's still a struggle today. It's such a crazy, amazing, heartbreaking thing that the Jews have gone through their whole life. There's a bit more that goes on. There's a couple of parts of the story that it's like, I really want to tell you that. It doesn't really matter to the story of Joseph. It sort of does, but not really. It's about blessings and all this stuff. Like Jacob brings Joseph's sons in and blesses them, but he switches his hands and blesses, a different one than he's supposed to. Kind of like, I think, pre-foreshadowing about like, look, you were the one that was blessed and you're the youngest. Generally, the oldest got the blessing. Like the firstborn was the blessed of all blessed. The firstborn is the son, the king, everything else, but they're changing it up. The Bible is making a point here to say that tradition isn't always something we're going to land on. It doesn't always have to be about the same thing. That's important to me. As a person who hates tradition, it says, well, it's always been this way, so we need to continue that way. That's where church has gotten it wrong so many times. We'll talk about that another day. But that's what people are like, well, why break something if it, why fix something that ain't broken? The issue here is that God says, look, it's not always about that. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. That's what I took away from this anyway. So we get down to the bottom of Joseph's life. And it's funny because he is the youngest, but it says here that when it was time for Joseph to die at 110 years old, he gathered his brothers. So they're not dead yet. He dies. He's like, soon I will die, but God is coming to lead you and your ancestors out of Egypt. Okay? So he's been there. There's like 7 generations that's happened since he's gone there. The Jews are growing massively here. 7 generations of Jews with massive family, 12. So there's 12 brothers and however many sisters who are also descendants. They're having kids. They're having kids. They're having kids. There's a massive 7 Can you imagine the family reunion? How many buckets of KFC you have to bring to that family reunion? It's going to be insane. The kids, I would be like, I hate all these kids. Who are these people? Anyway, cousins are having sex. Stuff's going on. But anyway, there's a massive genealogy, generational building, 7 generations building of the Jews. And this is where it's important. Okay? This is super important because this is a massive shift in the promise that God resonates to this day. That leads to Moses coming in and freeing the Jews from Egypt's grasp and their slavery. Because think about Moses too. But here's the where I can't square it sometimes. Egypt was good to Joseph. Joseph wasn't Egyptian. Egypt was good to Moses. Moses was adopted. And so it goes to show here that it's not always so cut and dry. But man, the Moses series is going to be one of the most epic series I've ever done, and I'm saving it to like last. I don't know. I'm not going to do it soon. But this is really cool how this connects into where Moses starts coming in, and then Egypt And all the stuff that's happening, all those slaves and all this stuff's kind of like becomes really, really important to the story of the Bible and the story of history of Jews, the story of history of our world and our genealogy in general. This stuff, guys, let's not forget, this stuff happened. Okay? This is all historical fact, proven. So regardless whether or not believe God had his hand in it or whatever it is, this person existed, this family existed, the promised land existed, Jews existed in Egypt and were slaves. So this is all there. Anyway, so Joseph dies and he's buried in a coffin in Egypt. So I'm not sure what happens after that, but maybe someone can, but I can't go into more. That's just, the story gets so long and crazy. But think about this here for a second. There's a couple lessons that we were learning in this story. Is that if you're a believer in Jesus, which I am, and you feel like God has a plan for your life, it's not always going to be rainbows and apple pie. A lot of it's going to be like shit balls and like, why am I here? What has happened? Why do I need to go through all this to get to the other side? Oftentimes people are being refined through the hard times to come out on the other side. Like when a silver maker refines silver is tarnished. You can't do anything with it until it's refined. Okay. But once silver is refined, like imagine a silver refiner making the silver, refining the silver. When the refiner can see his reflection in the silver, that's when it's pure and that's when it's made ready to be sold. So God sometimes is refining you through all the shit that you have to go through so that he can see his reflection in you on the other side. And it's up to us to kind of take that on, unfortunately. That's what I believe, right? So we're being refined. Some of the hard times I have to go through, maybe I'm being refined so that I come out on the other side stronger and better. Look at all the stories of the Bible. Moses would. We covered Jonah. He was refined by literally being swallowed by a whale, right? Look at every story of the Bible. Noah. Everybody is being refined and going through super hard times, come out on the other side. Like even Jesus didn't need to be refined because he's perfect. But think about that for a second. Sometimes when you're going through hard stuff, and there's a lot of people in my life right now, especially in this Dad Challenge community, people are going through some really rough times, and it's really hard for me to, people are asking, why does God let this happen? Blah, 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 all this stuff. I don't know. But I do know that when you go through hard times and you come out on the other side, tend to be stronger, regardless of now you believe in God or not. When you go through a really difficult time in your life and you come out with those lessons that you've learned, you become a stronger person, regardless of the lesson. So it's kind of what I'm taking away from this. He had to go through this, but he did not forsake his beliefs. He didn't have sex with Potiphar's wife. He could have done whatever he wanted. Could have had that. She's probably super hot. And decided I can't do that and went to jail instead for it. He just lived his life kind of like the way he was supposed to. There it is, the story of Joseph and his coat that was fly AF. I don't say if he ever got his coat back. I hope his dad held on his coat and he got it back. Let this be a lesson again, parents. Don't let your kids fight to the point where they're going to throw someone down and sell them to slavery. It's not conducive to good family times. All right. So thank you for listening to this story. I appreciate the few of you who do listen to these stories. I think that you like them. They're very time consuming, but I don't really care if anybody listens to these stories. I think that they need to be told this way. I think there's an important role that these stories play regardless of what you believe, because some of my friends are like, do not like them, the swearing and stuff like that. So, but thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to my channel if you do. And if you do subscribe, that's great. If you don't, I don't care. I think it's just cool that you're here to listen and that we're here to just vibe out together. And thank you for being you. And I hope that your week coming is amazing. I hope everything that you are striving for, you get. I hope that all the calories you consume this week don't come to your bum. I hope that your loved ones just shower you with love. My anniversary is coming up on the 15th, and I have to get some presents. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. Wow. It's okay. So I have to go to the mall, and I will see you guys tomorrow for Ministry Mondays. Oh my goodness, I have to go get presents. Talk to you soon.